Mark Francois.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try and be brief so that my friend Wantage can get in too. I'll have a go. Sorry.
One also wishes to contribute, so I know that he'll exercise enormous self-denying ordinance. Mark Francois.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're debating tonight whether or not to extend Article 50. The thing I'd like to touch on very briefly is whether the EU would ever countenance a further extension. And I say this because from 2007 to 2010, when we were on those benches, I was the party's Shadow Europe Minister. I did the Lisbon Treaty working with William Hague, and that was my epiphany. 14 days in this place, couldn't change a single punctuation mark. That's when I realised we had to leave. But in those 3 years, I hope the Minister will accept, I spent a lot of time visiting the institutions of the European Union, because that was my job. And I came to realise that for many people in the EU, particularly, though not exclusively in the Commission, what is often referred to as the European project has the status almost of a religious act of faith. People passionately believe in it, and it transcends almost all other considerations, and it must be promoted almost at all costs and protected almost at all costs. Very many people in the EU were utterly shocked when the UK voted to leave, absolutely stunned, because what we had done in their world was an act of heresy. It was apostasy to leave. And many people believed we should be punished, not least pour encourage les autres. But what they're even more worried about, is the UK taking part in European elections, which would bring 73 UK MEPs into the Parliament, many of whom would be likely to be Eurosceptic, though not all, which would completely upset the calculations that they have made, as it were, to reconfigure the new Parliament in order to keep out what they call the populists from Eastern Europe and, for instance, the Lega Nord from Italy. That is why they wouldn't accept the extension to the 30th of June. They insisted either on the 22nd of May or the 12th of April, which is the drop-dead date for when we'd have to begin European election preparation in the United Kingdom. So my argument, Mr. Speaker, very simply is this. I believe for the EU, protecting the integrity of the Parliament, which under the co-decision procedure under Lisbon has much greater power now relative to the other institutions, would be even more important to those who really believe in the project than trying to keep the United Kingdom in the EU, though many would like that. And therefore, if I'm right, they would not countenance any further extension beyond the dates that have been given, because it would muck up the European Parliament, and from Macron's point of view, that would spoil his plans to federalise the European Union. So my argument, Mr. Speaker, is we shouldn't be worried about a very long extension, because I believe, though I cannot prove it in the House tonight, they'll never grant it. They don't want, under any circumstances, to go beyond the 12th of April, because it means European elections that they simply cannot stomach, because there'd be 35 to 40 Eurosceptic British MEPs that completely rip up their plan for the Parliament. So I believe, yeah, I'm going to finish. I believe on that, I'm going to give one. And I believe on that basis, Mr. Speaker, the threat of a long extension has always been a false one, and if we get to the 12th of April, we can leave. Because I believe that those who believe in the project would not allow the extension. And finally, the government spent £9 million sending a document to every household in this country before the referendum saying this is a once-in-a-generation decision, this is your decision, and we will implement what you decide. If the people in this House overturn that decision, the people will be extremely angry. Don't say you weren't warned.